hold women to be justly entitled to all we claim for man. We go farther and express our conviction that all political rights, which it is expedient for man to exercise, it is equally so for women. Thus said Frederick Douglass at the 1848 Women's Rights Convention at Senecal Falls, New York. Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey lived an early life as a slave. He was born in Talbot County, Maryland, about 1818 to Harriet Bailey, an enslaved woman. He was separated from her early in life. Much of his early childhood days were spent with his grandmother, Betsy Bailey. He later chose February 14th as his birth date, his actual month and day of birth not being known. At age 6, he was selected to live in the home of the plantation owner, and this plantation was known as the that's W-Y-E house. Aaron Anthony worked as the overseer at this time. When Anthony passed away in 1826, Frederick was given to Lucretia Auld, A-U-L-D, wife of Thomas Auld. Thomas Auld sent Frederick to his brother Hugh Auld in Baltimore, Maryland. During this time, it was against the law to teach slaves to read and write. Sophia Auld, the wife of slaveholder Hugh Auld, chose to teach Frederick the alphabet. Frederick was about 12 years old at this time. Hugh found out and forbid his wife from teaching Frederick any further. However, this did not stop Frederick from learning. He continued to learn from the white children and others in the neighborhood. And rather than keeping his knowledge a secret and just keeping it all to himself, he actually turned it around and shared his knowledge with other enslaved people, teaching them how to read the New Testament at a weekly church service. Frederick grew to manhood. He fell in love with a free black woman, Anna Murray, who had assisted him in escaping to freedom. To help in his road to freedom, she provided financial assistance and other aid. He later boarded a northbound train of the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad. Within 24 hours, Frederick reached a safe house in New York City. 11 days later, on September 15, 1838, he and Anna were married by a black Presbyterian minister. Initially, they adopted Johnson as their married name. This is to help protect them from the individuals who have been searching for the slaves who had escaped to freedom. Anna and Frederick had 5 children together. Eventually, they changed their name from Johnson, and he later became known as Frederick Douglass. Anna died in 1882. 2 years later, Frederick married a white suffragist and abolitionist named Helen Pitts. This union created quite the controversy during this time. Frederick was a notable author. He wrote his first autobiography in 1845. It was called Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. He published 2 other versions of his biography throughout his life. One appeared in 1855, which was entitled My Bondage and My Freedom, and the other in 1881, called Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. The 1881 version was revised in 1892, 3 years prior to his passing in 1895. Frederick was a leading spokesman and writer for racial equality and women's rights. Because Frederick was an eloquent speaker, the prominent abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison invited Frederick to join them in the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. In 1848, he was one of the few men to attend and speak at the Women's Rights Convention in Senecal Falls, New York. This convention had been organized by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott. At the conclusion of the convention, a list of resolutions was published. Frederick convinced the attendees to add, quote, "It is the duty of women to secure to themselves their sacred right to the elective franchise." In short, Frederick believed women should fight for the right to vote. During the Civil War, Douglass became a recruiter for the United States colored troops. After the Civil War, he went on to serve under 5 presidents in many different roles, including U.S. Marshal and U.S. Minister, Resident, and Consul General to the Republic of Haiti. During this time, Douglass continued to be active in the women's suffrage movement. In 1866, he, along with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, founded the American Equal Rights Association. He was the Equal Rights Party's vice presidential candidate in 1872. He was the running mate to presidential candidate Virginia Woodhull, the first known woman to run for such an office. In February 1872, Frederick Douglass came to Worcester, Ohio. This was his second visit to our town. We have not determined when his first visit was here in Worcester. He was invited in 1872 to give a lecture at the Arcadome Hall. His chosen topic was on Santo Domingo. From the Worcester Republican on February 8, 1872 on page 2, quote, his historical narrative of the island was eloquent, instructive, and grand. Those in attendance agree that his narrative was unhesitatingly pronounced by all who heard it as one of the best, in fact, the best performance of the season, end of quote. Frederick Douglass died on 20th of February, 1895, shortly after returning from a meeting of the National Council of Women in Washington, D.C. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery, but became a man of great stature. He was an American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman. Without his persuasion and the encouragement at the 1848 Senecal Falls Convention and the fight and persistence of many great men and women may not have won the right to vote in 1920.